Hello everyone, I'm Sylvia from Fairlight Tarot. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another episode of Tarot in the Times of. Today we're going to have a look at how I use in my personal practice specific tarot and oracle decks in specific spreads in order to overcome self-doubt. And as always, I'm going to show you a couple of decks that I use for this specific type of readings. And while showing you the cards, I'm also going to explain a couple of things to what I believe is one of the most challenging problems in our lifetimes, especially nowadays, which is self-doubt. So the first deck that I'm going to use is the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. Now this is, hang on because there's a few editions, this is the original edition, but it's the second printing. So basically this deck has got a few different cards from the first edition and definitely a few more different features and cards from the Infinity edition, which is probably one of the most famous ones that we've seen also in my channel. A couple of months ago, I believe I did a deck haul video and the Infinity was actually in that video too. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you these cards and I am going to have a chat with you in regards to what I believe is self-doubt, how I identify self-doubt nowadays. So whenever we are confronted with a reality that doesn't conform with our expectations, there is a disconnect at the heart of our own confidence. And if the way we see ourselves is giving us the confidence we need to get ahead in life, being confronted with a different image of ourselves, something completely apart, something disconnected, something that actually clashes with our own image of ourselves, this may constitute a major setback. Let's face it, we live in a judgmental world, in a very judgmental society. We are not just judged by the way we look anymore, which, you know, I believe that kind of started in the 70s, perhaps the 60s, late 60s and the 70s, but then it just kind of evolved into a really, really scary monster. We are judged according to our values, for example, what we stand for example, our political and moral beliefs. But there's not even need to talk about really big stuff like that. I mean, what we can see in nowadays society is that we live in a very judgmental environment. Look, for example, at how we are measured in what we eat, what kind of movies we watch, what books we're reading. Our choices are still ours. But we are called up to be responsible for even the smallest and the least significant ones. In some countries, there's some kind of a point system that evaluates you as a citizen, depending on what websites, for example, you check out. And, you know, I've heard that this system is called some kind of a social media point. And this social media point will eventually have a big part in the decision of some things that you as a citizen are confronted with on a daily basis. So sometimes, for example, they will look at your social media score to decide whether you are eligible to get a loan, for example, or, you know, to buy a car, or perhaps to overseas or obtain a passport and some kind of, you know, bureaucracy related documents like that. And that is really scary, but I can assure you that is 1000% correct. All this control and the constant proposal of almost unattainable role model in any aspect of life. I mean, if you think about, for example, I'm a female, I'm a woman, and so as a consequence, I've always been confronted with some kind of a very incredibly difficult image that, you know, reflects the way I should look like. And it's always been impossible for me, and it's always been clashing with my own well-being, because I always thought, okay, well, a society is telling me that I need to look in a certain way, and if I do, it means that I'm a loser. It means that I don't look attractive, that I am not even a good person. Because at the end of the day, there is some kind of a connection, some kind of a correlation between being beautiful, responding to some kind of canon of beauty which is impossible to attain, and also being a good person, which is not the case actually. So this was the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. This is the original edition, but the second printing. And the next tarot deck that I wanted to show you is the Ember and Aura Tarot, the Awakened edition by Jamie Richardson. This is another deck that I use whenever I want to do a reading which is focusing on this very specific theme. So as we were saying, when we are confronted with this almost unattainable role model in any aspect of life, this can cause a massive lack of self-confidence. And it also causes an epidemic of self-doubt. Here we are. How are we supposed to conform to canons of perfection but still be true to ourselves? We are asked to stop eating to look skinny. We are asked to do an incredible amount of work on our faces to still look young, for example. And if for some reason we cannot afford that actually has a consequence for us. It's got a consequence on society. It's got a consequence on our own level of confidence. Now, whenever self-doubt arises in us, there is almost immediately a flood of negative thoughts that takes place in our mind. I'm not good enough, I can't do it, there's no point, etc. These negative thoughts are unfortunately quite self-fulfilling at times. What happens in our brain is that we are bombarded by confrontational and depressive thoughts, which can have the detrimental effect of lowering the levels of dopamine in our brain. Low levels of dopamine, and if you're not familiar with that, dopamine is also called the feel-good hormone. So lower level of dopamine unfortunately has the negative effect of letting any kind of inflammation run amok in our body. And inflammation is extremely toxic, extremely dangerous to have in our body, to the point that actually can lead to anhedonia. So the lack of pleasure in doing usually pleasurable things, the lack of enjoyment in life, lack of appetite, and in some cases also depression. This is in a nutshell what happens in our mind when we're confronted with self-doubt, and as a consequence, like if it were a domino effect in our body as well. Basically, when we keep on thinking that things cannot get any better, we will be progressively less motivated to make an effort, and it can become very difficult to get out of that train of thought. So what I'm going to do by using tarot is try to identify the main thinking line, the one that actually causes all these negative effects, these negative feelings, these negative thoughts as a consequence of that primary negative thinking. And I am going to tackle it. I'm going to identify that. I'm going to tackle it with tarot, and I am going to use certain specific oracle decks that actually really help me. And I also noticed that whenever I use them in clients' readings, they help clients a lot to get out of that train of thought, to get out of that self-fulfilling prophecy in thinking that we are not good enough and we will never be. One rather famous oracle deck that is quite good for these kind of readings is the Reclaim Oracle, and I think it's quite famous. This is the 3rd edition. It's a very simple oracle deck, as a matter of fact. I mean, if you look at the artwork, for example, you can see that it's very simple. The line work is very simple. It's very minimalist as well. What happens is that this deck is very surprising, because once you get it, you will see how powerful it is once you start reading with it. So it's an oracle deck that actually looks at ourselves. It looks at our the really deepest, darkest fears, and it deals with that in a way that is sometimes confrontational. As you can see in some cards, there's a real attack to those really dark parts of ourselves that sometimes we just put, and we just tend to hide them, we just silence them, because we believe that if we do silence them, they will not have any kind of consequence. However, we do face those consequences on a daily basis, and the best way to actually start to overcome those issues is to face them. So this oracle will definitely help you doing that, but in such a way that it will not necessarily leave a scar. So as I said before, there are some confrontational cards, but what I find is that this oracle deck, especially if you also use the guidebook when using the deck, It will just take your hand and help you overcome several obstacles that you can have in the way you see yourself, and the way you see yourself also placed in the society we live in. And then it will just gently take you to the other side. And this is the most important thing. So let me be clear. Whenever we talk about shadow work, and this is one of the many aspects in which we can actually refer to shadow work, this is part of shadow work. Whenever we talk about it, we need to be very careful. It is not just facing demons, it is not just facing aspects of ourselves we are not necessarily happy with. It means bringing something that is right now in the darkness, identifying that and bringing it back into the light. Once it's brought back into the light, we can actually have all the elements of our disposal to make a choice, and it's an informed choice. And this informed choice will give us the possibility to decide whether we want to nurture this aspect that we didn't even know about ourselves, or if it's something that is actually negative or toxic, then it will give us the power and the strength and the courage to let it go. And this oracle deck is absolutely fantastic in doing exactly that. So this is the Reclaim Oracle, and it's published by Little Darkness. Another oracle deck that I use quite often in this type of readings is the Inner Queen Oracle. Now this oracle is actually split in two, as you can probably tell. I'm guessing you can tell. So the first part is predominantly white or minimalist cards, and the second part is predominantly colored cards. This oracle deck is specifically very helpful when I address self-doubt related to appearances. So the body dysmorphia that many of us are forced into by being confronted on a daily basis by a role model that is, as I said before, impossible to achieve. This deck looks at our body, our female body in specific, and it talks about it tells you a tale of acceptance. It tells you that you don't necessarily have to love yourself, because that's another kind of imposition that we have, and that's one of the other extremes. For example, you don't necessarily have to accept every single thing that you have in your life that pertains to your body. What this oracle is asking you to do, on the contrary, is to be aware of who you are, how you look, of your body, the way in which it's shaped, the way in which it occupies space, because there is absolutely no reason why to avert your eyes to that. And perhaps we will not necessarily always like what we see, and that's okay, because it's allowed. We are allowed to be upset with, for example, the last couple of kilos that we put on, and we just, no matter what we do, we just can't seem to be shedding. It's okay to be upset about that, in the measure in which this is actually prompting us to do something positive for ourselves. The way in which this becomes negative is when it becomes an obsession. So when we confront ourselves with something that is actually not healthy. So if there, for example, every country has got some guidelines for a number of parameters that look at our bodies, not just the BMI factor, for example, but also, the certain amount of minerals in our blood, etc. And I refer to that. It's a very good idea of what healthy means. If we are not healthy, then in that case, we are called to do something about it, to actually activate ourselves in such a way that we strive to get back to be healthy. We are not, mind you, I'm saying healthy, I am not saying beautiful, because to me beautiful is something that is extremely subjective, and it should not actually be taken as a weapon. It should not be used as a marketing tool, and that's the opposite of what is actually happening. And as I said, I think that started with the 60s onwards, in which we were confronting ourselves with these images of supermodel, and the fact that they were rich, they were happy, they were famous, and every little girl, when I was a little girl, for example, it was those years in which you know, there were supermodels, and I was like, I will never become like that, and not even if I starve myself to death, because I simply don't have the right body. I am not that kind of, I don't have that kind of skeleton, I don't have that kind of frame, and that's absolutely fine. I can actually like a body that is different than mine, and accept the fact that my body will never be, to my eyes, perfect, but I can still love it. And that, to me, is the most important thing to achieve. That is what I believe. There's many cards in this oracle in specific that actually prompt you to accept yourself, and at the same time accept the fact that there will be parts of yourself that you'll never be able to, for example, to love, but you will have made peace with it. Because this is, especially when you reach a level of safety, level of health, that will be the right thing to aim for. That will be your goal. Not necessarily to look like a supermodel, but necessarily to look like someone who's healthy. So this is the Inner Queen Oracle. And last but not least, this is the Messages from the Heart of the Divine Oracle deck by Ashley Riva Brandt. Now, this oracle deck is very similar to me, to the Reclaim Oracle and the Inner Queen Oracle, and it feels like, because of several features like the color scheme, for example, or the line work itself, it feels like it's an excellent companion to the Ember and Aura Tarot. Now, this oracle is also centered on self-acceptance, and it really tells a very positive story, but not the pushy positive, not that kind of toxic positivity that sometimes, unfortunately, with good intentions, but sometimes we are surrounded by that as well. So this is a tale of acceptance. So what I would like to promote with this type of readings is exactly that, is the fact that we need to be accepting ourselves. We need to find whatever we like about ourselves and accept that that is the part that we need to nurture. But we also need to look at the parts we don't like about ourselves, and it's okay to have those parts. It's okay not to be happy about my nose, for example. It's okay not to be happy about my knees. I don't know, anything, because nowadays with the harsh criticism that we live under, it feels like we are constantly observing ourselves in a mirror and just deciding to focus on anything that is actually out of what is considered beautiful, which is absolutely absurd as a concept, because there is no standard for that, and it shouldn't be. And as a matter of fact, if you look at literary production throughout the centuries, you will notice that it's what's different that is actually more beautiful. So without even talking about that, because those are very strong examples, but if you look at this oracle deck, for example, it really promotes a very healthy approach to ourselves, our lives, our bodies, the way in which we channel our own energy. So the power of your voice, let your voice be heard. And this is a funny one. So I was using this oracle, for example, I think it was 2 months ago. I had just started my channel and I still hated my voice, and I still do. And I was thinking, everyone says exactly the same thing, and at first, you know, you really hate your voice because it doesn't sound the way you thought it would, and you keep on thinking, this is not me, so it creates that kind of disconnect we were talking about earlier. And then I was pulling cards from this oracle deck, and I got the power of your voice, and I thought to myself, I know that this card actually means something else, it's something deeper. But to me that day, that's exactly what I needed. I needed to hear that whatever my voice is, however my voice sounds, it doesn't matter. It's what I need to say that matters. It was what I want to communicate to the world that matters. And that is actually powerful. And I really like this deck because it's got that kind of revelation in each and every card. And especially when you use it, you know, paired up with the Ember and Aura Tarot, you will find how well these two actually talk to each other, and they will show you in a visual way the best way to reach that kind of confidence that we unfortunately have lost in recent years. So this is the messages from the Heart of the Divine Oracle deck, and it's going to be used later in combination with the Ember and Aura Tarot Awakening Edition. So as usual, now I'm going to show you one spread that I always use for this type of reading, so readings about self-doubt. And what I normally do, I choose a tarot deck. It can be a normal traditional RWS, it doesn't matter. What I invite you to do is to go through the deck and choose a card that represents in that particular moment something that the best way to express your own self-doubt. And I've already done that, so I went through the tarot and I chose this card. This card is the Devil card. I'm actually gonna put it closer to the lens to just show you that because there's a few sentences here that you might not be able to read, so I'll read them for you. But basically it says you're not enough, fear, it says you should, self-doubt, why even try, I have to, I can't, fear of change. Right in here says do not deserve to be heard. So as you can see, it's a very strong card. It's a very negative card. All of these thoughts are at the origin of the process that I was talking about before. So they definitely lower the level of dopamine, the feel-good hormone, which in turn creates that kind of a domino effect, which can lead to depression. But even without looking at the chemistry of things and the biological aspects of self-doubt, what's important to me that I want to communicate to you today is that self-doubt is actually very much self-fulfilling. There was a book that I read a couple of years ago. I apologize, I don't remember the title. If I do, I will make sure to write the title in the description box below. But basically it was looking at the social interactions in the animal kingdom. Okay, for example, when there is a male that is fighting for a female, as you know, many animals do that before the mating season, there's a winner and there's a loser, obviously. Now the loser, in many cases, if it's unlucky enough to lose more than once, so if they're unlucky to collect a number of losses, say for example 4 or 5, they will actually be a lot less likely to win after that. And let me tell you, it's not necessarily due to physical prowess. It is merely due to the fact that when you create a pattern, or you think you have created a pattern of losses, you kind of feel like you cannot win. And as I was saying before, this will generate a lack of motivation to try. So whenever you feel like you're losing 5 or 6 times in a row, it is very likely that you're going to lose a 7th, an 8th and a 9th time as well. And it becomes very difficult to get out of that train of thought. It's in the animal kingdom, so men is actually included in that study. Men do that as well. And think about yourself, or think about myself in my case. Whenever I have more than one things that are not going the way I would like them to go, I tend to think that maybe I should stop trying because, well, it takes a little bit more than that, but let's just simplify everything by saying that. So it generally pushes me to think, let's just stay home. Why bother? And I think that this card is exceptionally good in embodying that concept of why even try. It even says so here, why even try? Because I am not enough. So why would I try? Because I know I'm going to fail. So this is to me, it's a spectacularly good card for these types of reading because of this sentence. And it's obviously the devil. It had to be the devil card because the devil does signify that kind of feeling. So what I'm going to do, and you can find your own card that speaks to you about your own level of self-doubt or insecurity, and you put it in the center like this, and then obviously you shuffle your deck. I pre-shuffle it, but it's funny because I've spoken to a couple of you guys in the comments saying someone was saying they cannot shuffle the way I shuffle because otherwise they will have to hike around the room picking up the cards. I'm a completely goofy kind of shuffler. I have small hands and I have some kind of pains in my hands as well because of several injuries that I had when I was playing volleyball. And therefore, don't look at me when I'm shuffling. Just don't. Okay, so let's take 2 cards in this case, and these 2 cards are still tarot cards, and they show me where my self-doubt is affecting me, what areas of my life are being affected by the fact that I have this self-doubt, which is which is prompting me to ask myself, why even try? So we are going to put them here because as usual I have room problems, and of course it had to be 2 cards from the Suit of Swords because in my case it's all in my head. So the other day I was talking to a friend of mine and I was telling her that I have a lot of air in my birth chart, and she was like, oh really, not kidding? Okay, but in any case, so we've got the Page of Swords and the Two of Swords, and this is spot on for me. The Page of Swords, when I read the court cards in this kind of type of spreads, I read them as archetypes, and this is the archetype of the detective. That is to say, the person that always asks why. Always asks why. And that is absolutely what I do. I am so, whenever I am hit by self-doubt, I am so fearful of doing anything that I have to know everything before. My risk appetite goes down to 0, and I need to know everything, and I need to know it twice, and I need to know it backwards. I have to know it better than anyone else, and then maybe then I would do something. But this is me, and this is the way this self-doubt is affecting me in my life. And also this is the Two of Swords is perfect as well because it tells me that I am literally stuck. I am so scared of a change, of moving on or doing something different that it does literally feel like I'm blindfolded, and I'm surrounded by swords that if I move in the wrong way, I'm just gonna chop my head off, inadvertently. So it's definitely this kind of reading, as always, whenever it's a sample reading, it's never a sample reading because I end up channeling some kind of energy there. So once we have identified the card that represents my self-doubt and 2 cards that let me see where this self-doubt actually acts in my own life in such a way that is detrimental, I'm going to use, for example, the Inner Queen Oracle, but you can also use the Reclaim Oracle or any other oracle that is for you a self-affirmation kind of a deck. So as always, I'm going to shuffle. Okay, so I'm going to pull 2 cards. Okay, so as always I have to push these cards a bit further up because otherwise I don't have room enough. But it's funny because every time I do this kind of readings I'm like, yep, I know that. I know I should do that. So what I pull from the Inner Queen Oracle is the card for Hot Mess and the card for Transparent. Now, the hot mess, it's a kind of an internal joke. I always like to refer to myself as a hot mess. And the reason why I do that is because I always try to find a funny aspect to pretty much everything. I think that in this case, this oracle with this card in specific is telling me that I kind of need to accept that I'm a hot mess. There's no shame in that, or maybe there is, but what do I need to do? What can I do? I mean, at the end of the day, I know that I'm doing anything I can, and I'm trying my best, and I'm true to myself. So if everything is a hot mess right now, it's just the way it is. It's just the way in which I need to accept it. And it's probably something that I need to work out and something that I need to do ASAP, because these kind of things can go on for years. You can live in a hot mess, trying to reject it, trying to make it better. You see here, for example, there is all these threads that are so confused and tangled up, and your immediate, at least my immediate reaction with my OCD will be to, try and just solve the knot, realign and try and get to a result of perfection. But perfection is not achievable, certainly not by me. If you achieve perfection, hats off, absolutely go for it. But I strongly believe that the majority of us cannot. And so we were talking about that perfection, that role that is constantly shoved into our face on a daily basis, that tells us that we should look that way, we should, speak in a certain way, we should know that, we should also be able to do that. But we look at that and we look at ourselves, and that's where the hot mess begins, because we do not look like that. And that's when I think that we need to trigger that response in ourselves in which we accept that this is who we are. And we accept that we don't necessarily have to love the way we look or the way we are. But as long as we accept it and we nurture ourselves and our energy and our power, there is going to be a sense of overcoming these issues. Now, the second card that I pulled is transparent, and I really like that it's below the Two of Swords, because to me, one incredibly important thing is to be transparent about what my goals are, what I want to achieve. And there is a striking contrast between the fact that the figure in the Two of Swords of the tarot is blindfolded. Whereas, for example, in this card, everything points to the light, everything points to transparency, everything points to the fact that you actually can see. So my invitation, or what I consider to be the invitation from this oracle deck to me, is to thrive for clarity. Because this is the only way in which we will be able, at a certain point, to take the blindfold out and and pay attention to the swords, and just at a certain point just decide in which direction we are going to go. So this is with the Inner Queen Oracle. What I generally do after this, I pull another card from the Reclaim Oracle, but it's not necessary. It depends on whether you feel like you need it or not. And by this I mean, in my case, I feel like this reading is pretty complete by itself, but I wanted to show you, just as an example, what sometimes I do for myself or even for my clients. So I take the Reclaim Oracle, again, shuffle it, and then I just pull a card and I put it here. Patience. That makes sense. Obviously, this process requires a lot of effort. It requires a lot of patience. It's not something that you can achieve in a matter of a day or two. It's something that actually is a huge commitment. The fact that in my case, in my specific case, because this reading was based on my self-doubt, this is referred to the fact that I need more patience. And I know that about myself, and I have accepted that about myself. I am not a patient person. I force myself to be patient. It's something that takes a lot of effort. It really depletes my energy, because but whenever you deal with an anxiety issue, or people who suffer from anxiety, you will find that they want to resolve issues immediately. It's like not wanting to go to bed with something still on. you know, because I know that I won't be sleeping, and it's something that I've accepted about myself. It's something that I am certainly not in love with. It's an aspect of myself that I really don't like, but I have tried many times to change it, and I have actually learned to live with it. So the exhortation, the affirmation here, you know, the advice to actually have patience, for me, it's not just a simple advice to be patient, it is an advice to actually accept that patience requires a lot of effort for me. And so perhaps it's also a way of telling me, take your time, you know, be patient, but take your time, because you need your energy to be patient. But it's also a kind of a gentle way. You know, it balances out the negative feelings of these 3 cards on the tarot with the positivity that comes from these 3 cards from the oracles. So this is a sample of a reading. This is a sample of what I do in my practice to actually overcome that sense of self-doubt. But let's have a look at our other couple of decks. So now I just wanted to show you how well these 2 decks pair together. So this is the Ember and Aura Tarot Awakening Edition by Jamie Richardson, and this is the Messages from the Heart of the Divine Oracle deck by Ashley River-Brandt. These 2 decks, as I was saying before, they pair really well together because, well, first of all, you can see for yourself, the aesthetics are very similar, the color palette is very similar. I think that even the artwork is very similar. It's at least is something that you have a lot of echoes between the cards, and this definitely facilitates that kind of conversation that we really look for whenever we are trying to pair up an oracle deck and a tarot deck. These 2 are very, very good for this type of work. So we'll talk about the self-doubt, tarot in the times of the self-doubt today. And these 2 decks are used on a regular basis whenever I read for clients, for example, to like this together, but also for myself. And it's it's not based on the spread that I showed you before. It's more like you know, the occasional pull, or for example, it also helps a lot with some kind of a grounding practice, or evoking some kind of self-awareness. As you can tell, there's a lot of powerful cards in the oracle deck, but the fact that the tarot deck is so similar when it comes to, you know, artwork and colors, it means that there's this kind of really strong bridge between the 2 decks that makes the tarot deck powerful as well. And I just do this, I just go through the cards and I look at the meanings, and I think, okay, well, we've got spiritual maturation here between the 3 of Swords and the Hierophant. And I immediately, what goes to my attention is the words, the keywords, for example. I absolutely believe that the heartbreak of the 3 of Swords can be overcome with a spiritual maturation that you can achieve through paying attention to tradition, for example. And this is the kind of reading that I do. So if, for example, I do the spread before and then I just want to give out another couple of messages as a wrap up of a reading, I will definitely do pull cards from these 2 decks together. So we've got the Song of Your Heart, for example, with the 5 of Swords and the Son of Cups. We've got the Sensual Embodiment with the Diviner of Wands and the Magician, which is very powerful as well. We've got the Queen of Wands in such a way that it's bringing us to the attention of the fiery energy of the Suit of Wands and the performing quality as an archetype of the Queen of Wands. And the sensual embodiment is reflecting just that. It's reflecting the fact that we need to embrace that kind of fire that we feel inside of us. And this card really shows you that in such a way that we can recognize it and accept it as some kind of pertains to us and makes us and gives us the skills proper of the Magician, for example. We got cleanse and renew between the Devil and the Nine of Cups. It's definitely this kind of affirmation and this kind of advice to just turn the page from everything that we feel shameful about. Just, you know, turn the page from that and prepare yourself to achieve that kind of wish come true that is basically founded in the suit of cups, which is the suit of emotions, which is the suit of feelings. So connect to your feeling after cleansing those shameful thoughts. So seeds of creation between the Empress and the Ace of Cups, which couldn't be a better combination, because as you can tell, even when you look at the actual artwork, these two characters look very, very similar. The seeds of creation are part of the archetype of the Empress herself, and you know, looking into the progression of the seeds of creation into the Ace of Cups, which is the suit of emotion, you can really tell the direction in which these two decks are taking you in. So these two are very, very helpful whenever you just want a very simple, straight kind of answer. And I really recommend them. But I know that, for example, the Ember and Aura Tarot is unfortunately out of print. So any other deck that you feel goes really well with colors and artwork with the messages of from the heart of the divine is a very good combination to have. Now, the messages from the heart of the divine is a mass market deck, and it's very reasonably priced and it's quite readily available, you know, on Amazon or your Barnes and Noble or your local metaphysical store. So thank you so much for staying with me to the end of this video. As always, I'm inviting you to subscribe. First and foremost, it gives me the possibility to be in touch with the tarot community, which is something that I actually ultimately want to cultivate. I want to be able to get to a point in which I actually give these kind of readings live, and therefore there will be a much stronger participation from you as well, and a stronger connection as well. And that's really what I want, creating meaningful relationship, creating meaningful connections. I believe that that is exactly what everyone needs in this world to have a good life, a life full of positive vibes. So thank you again, more to come. Have a great day.